great start that we've been given. And I'd like to introduce our next two speakers for the afternoon. Joining us today, we have Andrew Beranbom from First Tube Media. And he's going to be joined by Jen Buckmaster from Microsoft. So thank you so much for joining us. And Jen, I love your title. I mean, it's like music and entertainment together in one role. I mean, that's spectacular. I'm sure you'll talk a little bit about what that feels like, but thank you so much for joining us today. I'll turn it over to you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Hey, Jen, how you doing today?
Good. How are you, Andrew?
Pretty good. I guess, maybe to get things kicked off here in this fireside chat with no fire, maybe just share with everyone your kind of background. As Ratish mentioned, you got one of the cooler titles out there at Microsoft that, land. Maybe just to let everyone know what your role is and your background. That'd be great.
Yeah, of course. So I actually graduated from college as a journalism major, so I took the most non-traditional path to working in technology and entertainment. But I actually launched the first Xbox when I was working at GMR Marketing. And shortly after working there, I took a position with Live Nation, working on their custom concert tours. So that's kind of how all of my weird roles come together. And then following Live Nation, luckily someone from Xbox remembered me working on the brand and brought me over to music and entertainment for Xbox proper. And then I graduated to doing it across the entire company. So kind of a short history. And what about you? I'd love to hear a little bit more about your background too.
Yeah, my background, I've been in the digital marketing world for about 20 years now, which is kind of crazy, but I started really early my career at Yahoo in the e-commerce division and building kind of first versions of e-commerce. And from there, I've been kind of an addicted entrepreneur for good and bad in creating SaaS and digital marketing startups, where I kind of look for business opportunities where brands and agencies are trying to make a build versus buy decision. And that's how First Tube Media got created. And I was running marketing for this Grateful Dead Fairly Well tour 4 years ago and realized how complicated it was actually for brands to harness music and in kind of a scalable way that I would look to do it as a digital marketer. And so, we've kind of been operating this business for now about 3 years. And so, so let's dive in. I think where I would love to start is kind of, what are some of the areas of marketing that you think are kind of under leveraged today by brands? I think there's obviously the ecosystem is moving pretty quick. From your guys' perspective, it's such a massive brand. How do you guys view that?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. It's weird having multiple Fortune 100 companies under one umbrella. So each brand kind of has a little bit of a take on how they think about, sort of innovation and things like that. But from my perspective, I think we've always had an ethos of growing with talent versus growing to talent. I think the same thing could be said for anything sort of across entertainment, fashion, pop culture. The more you can be ahead of the wave and actually integrate yourself into that environment, the more it comes across as authentic. Whereas if you wait until something huge pops off like TikTok, suddenly you're the brand that's glomming onto something that's already huge, and it's really, really hard to stand out, and it's hard to make an authentic connection in that way. So I am always beating the drum of finding a way for us to be first on the scene, honestly, and start building those relationships in that network.
Yeah, that makes sense. We're always thinking about authenticity is kind of first of mind. We operate as kind of a native live content platform, and with kind of trying to find artists on their acceleration, just naturally their fans are more engaged, right? And so the idea of attaching, to a Masego who's exploding versus, a Lady Gaga, obviously there's a larger reach with Lady Gaga, but the authenticity of it's kind of probably lost on most of her fans by now. If Microsoft's like, "What's up?" So that makes sense. I know Brand Innovators does this amazing thing of bringing together both brands and kind of different, innovative partners, to the table here. And I'm sure there's lots of partners that are, watching us today that would be interested in saying, "Hey, how do I get in front of Microsoft?" And, and obviously there's the awkward kind of, we talked about the volume of solicitations that you get on a weekly basis. And I'm just, I was trying to guess the number, and, I was way off by about, by 50. And I was just amazed by that. And so what are the ways that people get smart new ideas to Microsoft and you evaluating partners? Maybe give some tips to the audience here today.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think, honestly, something that's not talked about enough. I don't think anyone ever says, like, hey, I'm not going to answer your email, but here's the 50 things you could have done that would have gotten my attention. Honestly, I think it would be a helpful public service announcement here. So on our side, I think I have a close network of people that I work with across the entire company. And we are constantly looking at pop culture and sending each other tips. And, hey, did you see what Jordan just dropped? Or, like, check out this new music video. It's super innovative. They're using this tech. So a lot of times we're looking for the people that are innovating, and so we'll search out some of those relationships on our own, sort of based on what our business priorities are at the time. Another way is we have obviously a ton of agencies that are supporting us, and they'll bring us a lot of opportunities. I think the most important thing, and I know it's not always possible, but if you know somebody who's worked with us or there's some kind of connective tissue between having a relationship, that is by far the easiest way to get a response. And it's not that you have to be a big, gigantic corporation in order for us to consider you. It's really like, I'm going to have a ton of KPIs that are riding on what you're presenting to me. And if I don't have any trust with you or any relationship with you, and I don't know that if things go really sideways, are you going to be there and pick up the ball? There's just a ton of consideration that goes into that. Especially in marketing, it's all built on trust. So having somebody who can kind of vouch for you and honestly having the smartest pitch on the block. We've had a lot of people who have brought us things and there'll be an Apple computer in the middle of the presentation. I'm like, so use your head maybe a little bit on some of that stuff, but also like I completely respect somebody coming at it cold, and I do try to be super respectful on anything that's relevant. So you never know where a company's going to end up. So,
yeah. Well, you mentioned, the word KPI there. And so, kind of thinking through entertainment marketing, thinking through the landscape that we're in right now, budgets being slashed all over the place, obviously the economy's going through a challenging time. How do you guys measure ROI to entertainment marketing initiatives? How does Microsoft look at that, kind of as you're evaluating these different opportunities?
Yeah, that's a really hot topic too, honestly. And like I mentioned, we have a ton of different brands and we all have not all, but most of us have a different audience, and there's a completely different set of things they're looking for a success metric. So it is definitely customized, which gets really tricky. Like my role at Microsoft is specifically to look across the entire company and find ways to bring sort of a one Microsoft lens to any of our partnerships. So when we're presenting back to like a movie studio or a record label, like these are all the 5 brands participating. I can't be like, there'll be, 20 million impressions, and we'll also have, 50 million people doing, earned media. So like, I have to find a way to sort of conglomerate all of that stuff into a cohesive plan back. But I would say, regardless of what we're all doing, there tends to be certain categories that work for all of us. Number one would be media or social impressions. That's a big gauge for us. Participation and engagement numbers, obviously, if we can track the number of people that are working with us, that's a huge one. And then scale and buzz. Like right now, everything is all about earned media. It comes across a lot disingenuous for us to be tooting our own horn. So it's always really helpful to have somebody else help to amplify that message.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so like, when you're thinking about these different opportunities within the kind of the entertainment marketing landscape that Microsoft decides to invest in, how do you decide between film or music? Like, how does that go? How do you make that decision for a specific initiative?
Yeah, I mean, it's not always one or the other. And I'll say, the vast majority of any partnership that we're looking at, we do run it through a pretty rigorous set of ideals that we're hoping any partner will have, right? And so at the end of the day, we're always looking for authenticity, like why Microsoft does it make sense for this partnership. And then beyond that, I think making sure that there is going to be relevancy in pop culture and that there's going to be a reason for people to have a positive association with our brand and whoever we're partnering with. Film side, there's only a finite number of films that are happening each year, so we're trying to pick the ones that we think are really going to land with our audience. But we're looking at things like purchase intent.
You actually made a decision recently for a film, right, with Wonder Woman 1984. How did that go? How did that decision making go? Maybe share with the audience, what you guys are planning, what product, how the product is attaching to that, and how you guys are going to harness that.
Yeah, so I can't give away too many details yet because it's slated for August. But I would say on our side, the thing that we were really excited about with Wonder Woman as a property is Gal Gadot's character is she's rooted in truth telling and justice and all of the things that we care about a lot as a brand. Like they matched up really well. The ethos of everything that's kind of built into the storyline is very well aligned with our principles. So I think that was a super easy one, and not giving anything away. But in the first film, she worked at the Smithsonian, so certainly something rooted in education and potentially coding in STEM. That was a huge leap where we're like, yep, we could definitely do something there. So once we get sort of like the nugget of an idea and we get one brand to sign on, it's really easy to get the other folks to kind of sign on because you start to see, oh yeah, this makes sense. This will make us, we'll both look good using each other's IP. So yeah, that one just made a ton of sense for us.
Yeah. So I want to just talk a little bit about innovation, kind of like, Microsoft to me is the biggest of the biggest brands. Anytime I even think about engaging you guys, sometimes I'm like, oh my God, that might take me a year to even explain to you guys. Bring upon an innovative concept to you guys. And, obviously with what's happened here, major just human behavior shift, what are some short-term, long-term opportunities you're seeing in the market, for Microsoft specifically?
In terms of innovation, I'm sorry, that was your ask?
Yeah. Just kind of, yeah, exactly.
So obviously something we could have never planned for. And if you think even 5 years ago, I don't think we would be nearly in as good of a position as we are to address some of these concerns. But sort of with the advent of Azure and cloud services and, thinking about products like Teams or Mixer, which is our streaming platform, or Xbox Live, all of those things are built on being able to connect people remotely. So that, whether or not that was, of course, our strategy was never like, how will we be helpful in a pandemic? But I think we've always been mindful of, there's a lot of people who are doing a lot of interesting remote work scenarios, and how do we bring both work and play together in sort of a remote scenario? So that worked out really well. And I think having the tools that we can pivot, even though a lot of them are very business specific, being able to put a new lens on it, to help out some of our partners has been challenging and very exciting, honestly.
And how has like COVID impacted kind of prioritizing these different opportunities that you're mentioning here? Has it changed things? Obviously, you just rattled off 3 products that naturally what's going on has brought the market to you. And there's like 2 things to that, right? It's like, okay, and we're seeing a similar, acceleration of the demand around our business, around live streaming and brand owned programming, because, of kind of digital experiences needing, having a lot more demand right now. And so I'm just curious, like, how are you prioritizing certain things over others right now? Obviously you can't do everything at once. And so just curious how you guys are managing that.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing is, we are very much looking at everything through the lens of empathy, right? Like it's to use a non-marketing word, it's gross to be marketing something to somebody who's, potentially just lost their job or, their future is sort of uncertain. So you're not going to see us promoting things like, hey, we have these new products, you should go out and buy them. Really what we've pivoted to in, our messaging across the board is, how can we be more helpful? How can we keep you connected? Like what tools can we provide? And we're providing a lot of, free subscriptions for people to use some of our stuff. So you'll see both in our advertising and in our marketing activities, it's really about being helpful and additive and supportive in the community versus, doing any of our regular marketing and advertising.
Right. And you and your daughter were recently featured in a spot exemplifying this, right?
Yes, we were. I did get to showcase what a delight it is for both working parents to have children and animals running around in the background when you're trying to concentrate.
Yeah,
that was very real, by the way.
Yeah, I know we both shared in the impulsive decision of purchasing a dog in the last couple of months. And so,
we did, yeah. And I think we are both going through all the stages of grief and having brought a new puppy in this state.
Yeah. No doubt. And so, even with like you're talking about, delicately walking the fine line of reaching audiences, obviously you're in business, where does Microsoft take social impact kind of, into that equation? Entertainment market, we're seeing obviously with what's happened in the last few months, entertainment marketing has been a massive driving force of creating good in the market, right? Yeah. And it's been wonderful to see. There's also a caveat to that talent, based on, obviously the top talent can afford to do that, but there's a whole nother layer of the people that we work with every day that are hurting, right? And so, and while they instinctively, went and used their kind of influence to help, how is Microsoft thinking about like weaving in social impact at what you guys are doing right now?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, the more partners or talent or anyone in entertainment sort of shares with us what the real dynamic looks like, the more we can sort of pivot and support. The first couple of weeks, and I'm wondering if you're seeing this on your side as well, but at first it was very much like, hey, we just want to get in front of the fans and make sure we're relevant and make sure that we have, our song or whatever it is that they're promoting in front of a live audience. And then it very quickly pivoted to like, hey, I can't keep giving away free time. And that's not to say they never will, but it's a real and genuine impact on especially touring musicians who are supporting roadies and venues and, all of the support staff that come together for that. There's a huge loss of revenue for all the people they were supporting. So I think on our side, we're trying to be really sensitive about when we ask for things, it's not really a favor. It's how can we also support you? And then also our engineers, while they're trying to pivot to get all of the technology working for a massively increased audience, we're also figuring out how can we break into it. Like Teams was never meant to have people recording a music video with each other. There's two artists who are working together that's happening right now. And they're collaborating via Teams. And like, obviously that's not its core use. So how can we queue up the audio? How can we help them refine some of the video? So it's forcing us to be more innovative, which, like I said, I'm always really excited. It's kind of exhausting when you're doing something for the first time, but it's also first time 10 times a day. But also on the other side of this, hopefully we get there. On the other side of this, hopefully it just makes us stronger as a community and as a company.
Yeah, no, it's been fascinating.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's been fascinating watching, obviously the flooding of kind of consumer behavior to B2B software, right? Software that was created for B2B communications suddenly kind of transitioning to, being part of kind of B2C and entertainment. And so I think people quickly realize Zoom platforms and your guys' platform and others, in the conferencing space wasn't really designed for a lot of these digital experiences, and so we're seeing a boon around kind of how do I bring virtual conferences? There's a lot of thought around, okay, we've been doing tons of live streaming, where the goal is one to many. It's a classic kind of marketing campaign. How do I syndicate out my investment to as many people far and wide as authentically as possible, across every platform? That's what we've been doing for a long time. But now there's the flip switch. It's like, how do I take the one to many, but now how do I solve the many to one? How do I actually create a really intimate, dynamic experience for 10 people, for 20 people, for 50 people? And, I think you're going to see this challenge for our political situation that we're going into November. They're going to have to rethink how they're going to drive donations and drive charity and all this. And just the cause marketing vertical, we're seeing that as well. St. Jude's a client of ours. And we saw challenges with, they typically use live event strategy as a big component of raising money. And so, how do you rethink that strategy digitally? We just did this amazing thing for part of, on May 5th, it was part of Global Giving Tuesday. And, through our effort of building a digital tentpole kind of festival concept called Take 5, we actually raised over $1 million. And so that's, showing how you can rethink digital, and replace live. I think it's going to end up making everyone better, as we get out of this, across the board. And I think that's a positive to happen here,
Totally agree. I think a big pivot on our side too is how do you, in a virtual world, how do you make people feel like they're actually gathering together? So all of our, sort of social and streaming platforms are trying to find ways where you can actually feel like you are in a community environment, even if you're virtual. Because I think all of us are missing that community element right now.
Yeah, it's definitely just, I think everyone was like, oh my God, we're in these platforms and we want to do these things. And I've seen more kind of vaporware virtual conference startups in the last 2 months kind of hitting us up and saying, hey, you know how to market these tune-in events really well and drive people to engage them, but we can do more interactive, and then you kind of get into the details and you're like, oh, this is still not actually a real thing.
Yeah.
With kind of around kind of these let me shift gears here a little bit. With kind of live events being such a core part of what you're doing, in this kind of short-term experience, how are you guys thinking of digital live events and live experiences? Was it something that you guys had done in the past to complement your live experiences, where you had a kind of content program that married to what you were doing, in real life? Are you looking to potentially play some of that stuff now? How has that gone through as you think through the entertainment marketing decisions?
Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, I think we have, I'll give you a specific brand example. In a year where we have a product launch, we have a new Xbox coming out this year. We had a lot of tentpole events leading up to a traditional launch that are all live events, right? Where people can actually touch the games and, put their hands on the controller and that kind of a thing. And that's those are all super important beats for us in terms of marketing. So in the absence of actually being able to get in front of a community, how do you harness all of the excitement that you could have as a live event and still do it virtually? And I would be a really big liar if I told you we had it all figured out. But I think the good news is all of us are kind of figuring it out in real time. So we're watching some of the things that are working, and we're trying to pivot and evolve in real time. And like I said, push all of our technology to places that maybe it wasn't originally intended for. And a big focus, like I said, for us is, I don't think it's very engaging to just look at a flat screen, especially when you're presenting something really dynamic. So how do you make it feel like you're in the room with lots of other people and you're still experiencing something? So I would say that's the lens that we're putting on everything that we're doing that would be a live event normally. Yeah.
And as you're I know you have just a massively impressive history of working with artists and film studios, across your career, could you have tips, recommendations on how, brands should be thinking about engaging artists? Maybe share some war stories of the good and the bad, that you've had across your career. I know you worked with some of the most amazing talent out there. I think just I think a lot of people, don't realize how dynamic just the talent, procurement market is of and I know you do that in-house here and work directly to find your talent and procure them. And, it'd be great to just kind of share that with the audience today.
Yeah, I have a really weird role. I think a lot of the things that I do are typically farmed out to many people, but out of approximately 130,000 people in the company, I'm the only person who has this particular role. I've been able to sort of evolve as I've gone along, but to answer the actual question, I think there's lots of horror stories, and I would say we're equally at fault on a lot of them. It's getting involved with talent that has ideas that you will never be able to fulfill, or if it gets into a situation where the budgets are completely not aligned with what the output is going to be, we try to put as many bumpers around that stuff so that we don't get into that situation. But of course, it still happens all the time. I think the more we can work directly with the talent and the talent team to actually talk through what that vision is, the better the output always is, instead of trying to have somebody play telephone where a person will call you and tell you this is what he wants to do, and then we do a lot of work and then it's never what they actually wanted to do, which
Right.
happens a lot too. But I would say we've been honestly pretty lucky in terms of the projects that we picked. There's always a couple sweaty nightmares in there for all of us, but
Yeah.
again, that helps you kind of evolve and learn. Right now, we're working with Deadmau5, and he is the biggest technical genius. He can run circles around some of our own engineers, and he's working on something super innovative that's never been done before, and it just kind of came out of his brain. And so we all get really excited to support those type of ideas. So long story long, I would say the more somebody can actually get involved with us and translate what they're looking to do, the better the output is always going to be.
Right.
I'd love to hear on your side too. You do a lot of the same things that I do in your line of the business, but just kind of on the opposite side of the camera, if you will. What are some of your learning lessons?
Yeah, I mean, obviously what we're doing, for brands around our strategies is just really we're trying to create authenticity in any message that we're getting out there. And so, force feeding down the throats talent to do something for our brand, right, is not the way to approach this, right? And so, we're obviously, we view brands and talent as publishers in the market. And so we're trying to figure out how do we harness those channels to create as much authenticity, in the messaging that we can create there, whether it's through video or UGC content, et cetera, all bumbling up to having really, dynamic tune-in moment, right, where we create a lot of value for the client. And so, when we're thinking about, working with artists, we're trying to figure out, hey, here's a sandbox, right, of what we're trying to accomplish. How do we take the sandbox and you build a castle in it, right? And so that's kind of obviously been the right way to approach it. And I think, it's key to the brand. Actually, it got me thinking to another question of the dynamic you deal with. And just like when you're looking at talent, you're working under, like, I keep calling you guys this gorilla, this massive company. But like each one of you, I mean, I believe you have like 3 F100 products or, in your business. So, each has different target audiences. How do you balance, talent selection across those? Like obviously Xbox has a different, entertainment strategy than meetings, right? And so how do you balance that, and kind of how does that go? Is it impacted, or is it cross-functional, or are you just kind of focused specifically on each audience by itself?
It's a great question. I mean, I think we have so many particulars around brand safety and making sure that everything feels really inclusive. So a brand like Xbox is obviously, not obviously maybe, but their audience, one of their number one passion points is around hip hop, right? So we're like, we internally, like the group that works on Xbox, like we all love hip hop, and like it makes total sense to us. But I think once you start to dive into, and it's not just hip hop, I shouldn't pick on them. It's just that Xbox like happens to specifically like that category. And any song, sometimes there's walkouts or there's scenarios that are a little too spicy for prime time. So it gets really limiting when you're, instead of thinking about it as one individual brand, you're thinking about how is this going to show up in front of the entire Microsoft audience. So I think we definitely feel a lot of responsibility to make sure that we are providing inclusive things and really thinking through, like, is this going to land in the right way? Like, is it worth taking a risk? And I'd be remiss in saying that we're always perfect, because certainly there's some things that we're like, this is so amazing, like it's just going to be the perfect thing. And as long as the sort of the lens that I put it through is, would this be something that would be put on broadcast television? Would you hear it on the radio? And like, how do we feel like our audience would react to this scenario? Even if, like Microsoft as a brand is always a bigger target. But if it's pretty reasonable that they're saying something that you would hear anyplace else, that will probably be okay.
Right on. And so, cool. I'm pretty much tapped on questions for the 30-minute session here. I think we have about a minute left before we're going to open up the Q&A. Where you're dialing in from, Seattle today?
Just outside of Seattle, in a little tiny town on the east side. It's pouring rain here, in case anyone was wondering. We are right on brand with Seattle.
Oh, got it. And then that'll end in a couple of months, right?
Yes, exactly. Talk to me again in like August, and we should, have some sunshine again.
There you go.
You're in New York, is that right? No, you're just outside of New York.
Yeah, no, we're here in Brooklyn, New York. We're based out here, and we didn't run away. And it was nice for my family to let me out of the basement for this call, and so I didn't have to be. I said I needed a more.
My family's going by in the background.
I did see your daughter with the beanbag hat roll behind you at one moment here, and that's the beauty of the world we're living in right now. And so hopefully everyone enjoyed our conversation here today. I think we're going to get. So much.
It was so great to meet you too.
Yeah, this has been a pleasure, and I think we're going to get ready for a Q&A here in any minute. And so I think. Why don't we wait for that here? I think we're right on schedule here, so I'm just waiting for, is it one of these nice folks from the Brand Innovator side to join us?
While we're waiting on someone to join us, I have a question for you. Have you seen a giant uptick in terms of folks asking you for streaming opportunities at this time? Like, are you expanding sort of your knowledge base to try and accommodate these new requests that are coming through?
Yeah, I mean, the situation, obviously the demand of live streaming, just exploded on the consumer side. Instagram Live's being used like crazy. All these platforms are being used. As brands started to think about, how do I leverage this change in consumer behavior and obviously shifting things that they were planning on doing in real life to digital because of just all those kind of macro effects to our business, we quickly had to design a new remote production system capabilities. And so we had already been working on some stuff that was in our product roadmap. It suddenly became the top of our product roadmap. We've built over 35 DIY remote kits in the last month and a half. We shipped them all over the country to produce shows remotely. And so we're able to take cameras that are being, artists can build them themselves, and we're doing cooking shows all the way through music performance. It comes into a cloud server, and we can turn it into a TV show. And so things like that, where we had it on our roadmap, we suddenly accelerated and have it in market, within 4 weeks because of the demand. So it's been pretty exciting times, and we're definitely. I don't know what day it is because I haven't left the house in a while, but I also the work's been keeping us busy, so it's been healthy.
It's May 97th today, so I think you're good.
Yeah, perfect.
Hello.
Hey, Ritesh, how you doing?
I'm doing fine, thank you. Well, hey, listen, on the topic of geography, I mean, I'm joining you guys from Toronto, and it's not snowing. It's not snowing, and so we're not living to the stereotype right now. But it's okay. It's actually a mild day, and I just gonna jump in for a few quick questions here. But before I do, Jen, to your point, it is all about earned media, and I'm gonna say that I'm broadcasting today from a brand new Microsoft Surface Laptop 3.
Yes.
In case you don't believe me.
Yes, that's amazing.
Yeah,
I'm very happy.
It has to be one of the best laptops I've ever owned, and I'm not saying it because I'm a paid influencer. I'm just, based on my experience.
I appreciate you so much right now. You have absolutely just proved my point.
I love this laptop. Okay. All right. Let me ask you. So we have a lot of questions for you guys. So let's get to the first one here. We have a question from Melanie, and she asks, how do you break the COVID-19 messaging monotony? How do you overcome writer's block when generating content?
On our side, I think we're quickly seeing the fatigue that people are having on, it was one benefit after another, and certainly a great, effort. But I think everyone is starting to pivot in real time, and I think you'll see us start to, pivot in some of that messaging. And like I said before, I think it's anything that we do is going to be led by empathy. Like, what is this? Like, how are people collectively feeling? Like, how can we be additive and supportive instead of, marketing to people? And I think that will just be sort of the best way we can serve any of the things that we're doing is trying to be sensitive to what's happening.
Yeah, and there was this amazing video that was put out, and it showed all the first TV commercials over the course of the first few weeks, and it was like almost all the same exact music behind every single commercial of like the sad, somber, vibe. And you know what, I think where brands need to shift from, hey, let's be sad together, is let's inspire together. and I think that changes not only the music strategy selection to it, right? But I think it just changes kind of your innovation around how you should be talking to your customers and your audiences.
Yeah, celebrate the new world order. I think that is definitely in place.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Yeah, so let's go to the next one. The next question is for Jen. It's from Joel. And Joel's wondering, it's probably hard for you to name one, but is there a favorite project or an event or a program of all time, Jen, that you would like to talk about?
I would say, can I give you two examples? Because there are two that immediately come to mind.
I will take two.
I would say probably the one that I am super passionate about. We did a project with Donald Glover, who obviously is Childish Gambino, and he really gave us the contents of his brain and this crazy idea that he had. I have an amazing colleague named Amy Sorakis, and she and her team really put together a tech solution that was never done before. So hearing somebody's vision and then actually see it be actualized across a dome in the middle of the desert at Joshua Tree was something I never thought I'd be a part of. And this was before Donald Glover was like a household name. So like we had sort of all access, and truly like one of the most magical projects I've worked on. And the second one on more of the film side, or more of the streaming side, was our partnership with Stranger Things. Netflix was such an amazing partner, and it was such a robust program, and it made Windows the darling of a campaign, of a consumer campaign, in a way that it's really hard to personalize something like Windows, and people don't like wake up and be like, oh, Windows, I love it. So to see something like that happen and to have so much excitement was honestly really groundbreaking. The great team on the Surface side came up with a lot of the social media stuff, but those two were probably my most favorite in terms of the outcome.
Nice.
And the journey.
Those are two excellent examples. Thank you. We have a question for Andrew. So Andrew, Scott would like to know, for artists that are doing live streams, obviously, challenging times right now with no physical concerts happening. But the question is, if these artists that are doing live stream who need to make money from selling tickets or access, do you see brands that stepping in to fund them instead so the fans can enjoy for free and artists can get compensated? Is this a next level of brand sponsorship?
Yeah, and so we do a lot of that, obviously, and so absolutely, there's a whole segment of brands that are looking to help support artists right now, and obviously, without the ability to tour and that entire revenue stream disappearing overnight, I think there's a responsibility for the brands that do depend on this, and have succeeded with this to support, the industry during these trying times. And so, there's a couple of different solutions that are also just dynamically happening over the market. And so, obviously brand support's one. There's a tremendous more value in the market for a brand than ever before for getting talent. And so, but at the same time, we're in the business of definitely paying artists to align them with brands in the right way. And, we've been able to do that, even through these challenging times. Artists are definitely, like I mentioned really earlier, they're getting tired of doing things for free, and it comes to a time where, they have lots of people that they need to support that are hurting during this. And so it's really about finding those artists. There's different types of, artist grant programming that we're working on, where brands are looking to actually spread their social impact dollars across as many artists as possible, empowering artists to create content in professional ways. There's lots of different things that we're working on, really trying to support the community like that and bring value to both sides. And that's the key thing here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Then, you know what, I know it's appreciated. I actually am quite connected to the local, let's call them the amateur music community here in Toronto. And I think that's tremendously useful. So thank you so much for that. Yeah. Jen, question for you. And before I ask you this, thank you for calling out Deadmau5, nice Canadian boy, right down the road from Niagara Falls, not too far away. My question for you is, it's pretty amazing, but I mean, you're a journalist and you're working for Microsoft, so I mean, that's pretty cool. What is the best virtual concert that you've seen in the past 8 weeks?
Ooh, that's a good one. I saw a really interesting one, and I'm terrible. I'm excited about the artist and terrible about who the brand side of it was. But I saw something via Instagram with Devin Dawson, who's a country musician that I really like. I've seen a ton of there's a cool series that's happening through Interscope where they have I think it's with Bud Light, but I could totally be wrong. But they have a lot of musicians that they're programming. And there was actually a really cool one with Youngblood too. So seeing people, what I get excited about is it's not just sitting there playing music. It's how are you curating the audience and talking about cool things that are happening and making it about the whole storytelling. So that's what I get excited about. I like all music. It's terrible.
I mean, it's hard to nail down, one or two choices, right? It's like asking somebody what your favorite food is. It's very difficult.
I know.
Depends on the day.
I'm kind of paging through them all the time. So I can't remember what I had for breakfast, so forgive me on the details. There's a lot of things cooking in my brain right now.
Yeah. No, listen, guys, thank you very much for this excellent session. I think, a great conversation across the board and some really cool topics that came up. So Andrew, thank you so much. And Jen, thanks so much for joining us. And, we're going to meet our next speakers, but actually before, I am sure they'll come in anytime now, but, I wanted to just say, Andrew, I guess he just left us, but in case you see this afterwards,